Welcome, everybody, back to the Manage to Win podcast. Glad to have you. We have Michael Zipursky here. He is the CEO of ConsultingSuccess.com. He is the consultant to consultants. So, Michael, we have a lot of people in our audience who are either consultants today or basically they have a professional services business and they want to build more consulting into it. So if you can give a little bit on your background, where you got to where you are today, and then we're going to dive in because I think this will be really valuable to our audience.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks very much for having me here, David. Really excited to jump on and just appreciate what you're doing, sharing knowledge and helping people to get better. So just want to share a little appreciation on that. But I've been in consulting now, building consulting businesses both in North America and in Asia for the last 19 years. And about 10 of those years, the last decade, has actually been working with consultants. So I started off out of high school, first kind of year or two in university, built with my cousin Sam. Back then it was a web design development company, kind of in the early days of websites. And that was our first kind of client facing business. And after that, we built a branding and design consultancy. And that's actually what took me over to Japan, where I ended up opening up a branch office for that business, and had a real pleasure of working with some very large organizations in Japan like Panasonic and Financial Times, Dow Jones, Sumitomo, Omron, a whole bunch of other organizations, and helping them with their marketing and communications globally. So I spent several years in Japan building that business. And then when I came back to North America, I started a lead generation consultancy, really helping professional services firms. So whether it was accountants, insurance providers, investment companies, and also other consulting firms themselves that were really looking to generate more leads. And so that was our focus at that time, was helping them to do that. And around that time, what we found was, that we wanted to share some of our experiences, both what was working and what wasn't. And so we didn't really have a monetization model behind launching Consulting Success. It started off as a blog where we published content and kind of stories of what was working and, again, what wasn't. And that took off. We saw a whole kind of community build up around that. And so now fast forward to where we are today, we put out courses for those who are transitioning from corporate to consulting. And then we have a coaching program for consultants. And we've had almost 400 consultants now go through that program that have added 6 and 7 figures to their annual revenues as a result.
Okay, well, this sounds great because it sounds like today it gets to be my therapy session where you're the therapist or the coach or the consultant, because I've been in consulting now for 14 years and have not had your level of success, been focused very much on a niche market. We're trying to grow out of that. But I'm kind of curious, what do you find is the primary problem that consultants run into that limits their ability to grow what they're going to do?
Yeah, that's a really great question, David. And I wish that there was just one. The reality is, it's often a combination of many, many factors. But if I was to hit on one key thing, or one that really connects all of the others together, it's mindset. Right? People get stuck, and really where they're facing limiting beliefs. We know what we all know, but let's just say that you're running a nice consulting business right now. You're doing well. You might be kind of getting comfortable, and I don't mean you specifically, but just whoever we're talking about here in general. To get to the next level, to grow beyond where you are, someone may not even know what that looks like. Or they might have apprehension or anxiety around that because they have beliefs that to get to that next level, they're going to have to work a lot harder or have to spend a lot more hours. And none of that may be true. So the first thing that I would say to people is to surround yourself with the right people or the right information in whatever area of your business or your life that is that you want to excel in, that you want to make some improvements. And that'll help you to see what those new opportunities are. And just expand your mindset. Once you've done that, then you can figure out what are the actual tactics or strategies or steps or actions that are required or that will help you get to where you want to get to, in the shortest time possible.
So a lot of our people offer managed services, IT managed services, or some other type of service on a monthly retainer type of thing. And really what they need to do in many cases is to move beyond that and start providing more strategic consulting with the business, where they become a business consultant more than a technology consultant. And how can they make that transition and get paid for it versus just the client feels, well, you're supposed to do this because I'm already paying you whatever each month.
And are most of the people that you're referring to, are they charging by the hour?
No, they charge based on the number of users they support or
No.
the number of devices they support.
Got it. Yeah. So, I mean, one big opportunity would be to look at how are you monetizing the initial strategy component of what you're doing. Are you generating revenue just as a result of providing that ongoing service or support? And what could you do on the front end or even on the back end to add greater value for your clients? And so, what we see a lot with people who are facing this exact situation is that they're very focused on doing the work, on providing the service or the product, but they're not very focused on the actual value add that can come before, after, or the strategy. And so these are often situations where people are actually providing a lot of skills and expertise and valuable counsel and advice, but they're not even thinking about charging for that. They just see that as part of the engagement. However, if you really package that and you position that and you communicate a lot more value around that side of it, in terms of if you're starting the engagement off, what if instead of just having a conversation and then talking about how many seats or users they have and what their requirements are, what if you actually branded an experience that really helped your clients to achieve a lot more than they're expecting, and it was a much deeper, more immersive, more focused and strategic experience in terms of whether it's a conversation or a Zoom call or an in-person. But if you took that to a much deeper level where you were actually providing a lot more value than you typically would, number one, that would differentiate you from all the other competitors in the marketplace, but you could also likely charge for that where you're currently not charging for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And what these guys get caught up in a lot in is focusing on delivering the service, like you said, and then also, when there's a quote, when there's a project, when there's a replace a PC or a monitor
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, and they get caught up in that, and they lose the strategy part, which is kind of what you're talking about. And so um, I'm curious, then you get the question, well, how do I have time for that when I'm so busy with this other stuff?
Right. So, I mean, that's a deeper business question, because if you're currently in a situation where you feel that you're so busy just working in your business and you don't have any time to work on your business, it means that there's big opportunity to make some adjustments, to make some improvements, to figure out where you're currently spending all of your time, because likely if you're in that situation, it means you're spending your time on some low value tasks. In many cases, it could be a lot of low value tasks. And so if you can identify what those are and take an inventory. So one thing we suggest to our clients, David, is to actually go through and make a list of everything that you're currently doing in the business, from start to finish, from client engagements to actually sales and marketing and proposal, everything that goes on, delivery of service and product, and look at what are you actually doing. And what you should be able to identify is that there are tasks that you're currently spending time on, again, that you could get someone else to do. And the typical comment that a consultant would have, because consultants often are quite conservative, is, well, I don't want to spend money or time on that, or I don't want to go off and hire someone to take that off my plate. I know how to do that very well, and it would cost me money to do those things. But the reality is that most of that stuff, right, you could probably get someone for 20, 30, 40, 50, even 60 or 70 dollars an hour. Like, you can get real experts to help you with almost everything that you could imagine within that range. But a consultant, first of all, shouldn't be charging hourly. But if you figured out what your actual hourly value is, you pretty quickly see that it should be well over $100, if not over $200. And so if you're currently spending time working on something that's you can get someone else to do for $30 an hour, and you're doing that yourself, and let's just say that your hourly value is even $200, or even, let's make it simple, $100, it means you're actually losing $70 every hour that you're doing that work yourself. So not only are you losing money by doing all that extra work yourself, you're not creating the time and space to think more strategically about the vision and on how to actually work on and build your business. So that's what I would say to people, is that it's important to create that space and make sure that you're focusing all of your time on the highest value works and getting out of the low valued work.
Well, that makes perfect sense. So, but let me ask you about what comment you just made. that you should not be charging hourly.
Hmm.
So when they're going to shift and they're going to do this work,
Yeah.
um, how do you talk to the audience here about that? How do you position that so somebody's going to accept that? Because the buyer typically is going to do some type of calculation.
Sure.
What am I getting per hour? And they're focused on that piece of the puzzle.
Hmm.
And I'm going to stop there before I say anything else because I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, so buyers, like most people in society, are used to this idea of, time equals money. And so they think in terms of hourly fees, but they only think about that if that's how you set the stage and if that's the conversation that you have. So number one, don't talk about hours because buyers don't care about hours. They might think that they do, but what they really care about is the outcome and the result. And so instead of focusing on how many hours something is going to take, focus on what the result and outcome is that the client wants. As an example, let's say you're going to engage in a project with a client. If the project takes you 6 hours to complete or it takes you 16 hours to complete, does the buyer actually care? Not really. I mean, if they can get the result faster, then that's fantastic. But as long as you're completing, getting the result that the client wants within the agreed to timeline, it's not the number of hours that it takes you to get that result that the client cares about. They just care if they're going to get that result. So what the consultant needs to do here is to get very focused on what does the outcome look like? What is the value of us doing this? And what is the time frame? Like how soon do you want this to see this result? And then again, here, this is where the problem with hourly fees come in. If you're the consultant and you're able to actually get the result for your client much faster, it actually means you're going to make less money by doing that. Yet the client receives a significantly greater benefit by receiving those results faster. So if you're focused instead on the value and the outcome for the client, and you don't talk about hours, because you're right, David, the moment that you mention hours in any part of your proposal, in any part of your conversation, the client will start to calculate and try and figure out, well, what is their hourly fee? But you don't want to do that, because if you're pricing appropriately, if you did that way, your hourly fee would end up becoming $300, $500, $1,000 or more per hour, and most clients aren't going to feel comfortable paying that. But they will feel comfortable if it's very clear what the outcome and the value and the result is that they're going to receive, and if their investment still provides them with a very positive return. So you got to frame it in those ways. What is the actual outcome, the value, and then what is their investment? And as long as they're getting, again, a very positive return on their investment, then they don't need to really care much about if it's going to take 5 hours or 10 hours, as long as within that timeline. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, perfect sense, but I'm going to give you a little pushback because, and I've been trained on that whole thing of, okay, if this is going to save you $100,000, would it be worth $10,000 for you to buy this, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And my experience, and I'm reasonably good at sales, it doesn't go that smoothly.
Yeah. So it depends, first of all, on the company, right? There are certain organizations, typically larger ones, especially when you enter into procurement departments, where they don't work that way. But here's the thing: if you really want to succeed in doing this, then you can't be dealing only with procurement. You have to find a real champion within the organization that has the decision-making authority and the ability to push past that. Now, if you can't do that, then it means either you need to figure out how to do that, or it means that you're not dealing with the right ideal client. So here's the real thing about hourly fees. And if we're talking about business models as well, there's no one way to do things, right? When we have clients that we've worked with who are running $5 million businesses right now as consultants who use hourly fees. They're successful. We can't argue that, but that fits with their model. However, if you are a solo or a small consulting firm and you don't want to work on volume, you want to focus more on value, then you need to move away from hourly fees. And so what that really means is if you are speaking with someone who is just so stuck on the idea of, no, we're only going to work with you if you give us an hourly fee, and if you don't do that, then we're not going to work with you, then it means they're not an ideal client. And you need to find people who can see past that, they don't really mind about how many hours you work as long as they're going to get the result that they want. And so that's where client selection becomes extremely important, and becoming very clear on who your ideal client is, because not everyone is meant to be an ideal client for you.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. I think it's when we talk about the ideal client, I heard you say two things in particular. One was you may need to look at working with larger businesses, because most of us that have spent years in sales no, it takes about the same amount of time to close a small client as it does to close a
Sure.
big one. Has that
Definitely.
been your experience too?
100%.
Yeah. So that's one piece. The other thing you brought up that's critical is you've got to find a way to get to the person who's the decision maker. The procurement people are more like a gatekeeper. They're going to look at hours. They're going to try to do the simple math. But when you can get to a decision maker and you can say, well, I'm going to save you by doing this $100,000 a month. I'm going to charge you whatever for that.
Hmm.
They're going to look at the delta between the ROI of what they're going to get versus what you're going to charge. And they
Sure.
don't really care about the hours. If you can get to the right person though, that's critical.
Yeah, and so this is where the front end is a lot more important. People are often very focused on just thinking about the marketing and the sales process, but if you're talking to the wrong person, if you don't really have true clarity on who your client is, which is the decision maker, then you might end up spending a lot of time, a lot of wasted time in marketing, in communications, in meetings, in conversations, in proposals, only to find out that the person that you're actually speaking with that isn't able to make the decision. And then that's where you end up facing a lot of resistance or having a lot of challenges, because when you're then dealing with someone who isn't the decision maker, even though they might say, yeah, let me try and see what I can do here, they ultimately then put you off to someone else who is a decision maker, and that's someone who you've never even spoken with. And so your proposal is not going to resonate with the ultimate decision maker. And so it's key that you find out and that you really work hard on the front end to get in front of the real decision maker, because that will make your whole sales process significantly faster, but also more successful.
So I'm going to describe a scenario. Let me see if you've got an example for this.
Sure.
So you are, let's say I'm a consultant, and I'm not describing myself, but let's say I'm one of my clients, which is often these IT services guys who are providing IT managed services,
Hmm.
doing a great job at it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be our client. We don't work on that side. We work on the leadership culture side.
Right.
But they have a relationship with the client.
Hmm.
Okay. But what they haven't done is they haven't figured out where they can bring something to the client that's worth that, just to stay with those numbers, that's worth $100,000 ROI.
Hmm.
And I wonder if you had an example of somebody who was stuck like this and then you helped them through it. And yet they went through some steps. They did something that enabled them to identify, oh yeah, okay, I've got this client, I've got the decision maker. He or she likes me.
Yeah.
I'm good, but
Hmm.
I haven't brought something forward. And even if I got the other business that's somewhat hourly, not exactly hourly, it's per device or person. Um, but I want to bring this other thing that's going to be based on value. And
So yeah, changing or offering a different pricing model to an existing client is a challenge, right?
okay,
People typically, right? We're creatures of habit. No one likes to feel like they're now paying more for something that's similar or the same. It's hard if someone's already paying you on an hourly basis to say, hey, you know what? For our next project, I want to change how we're doing that. There are some clients who will be happy with that because they just love what you're doing. They're innovative or open enough to give it a try. But for many people, it's like, well, why would we do that? Why can't we just stick to doing things the way we've always done them? So for people who are working with existing clients and they want to increase their fees or they want to change their pricing kind of model and strategy with an existing client, you really have to create new value. And that would come, David, from having several conversations or as many conversations as needed with your client, really listening to what's going on, even getting introductions made to different departments in their organization, because that could then create a newer opportunity for you. But it's, we did have one client or several clients, but as you're mentioning, one specific client came to mind. He was providing, him and his staff and team were providing services in search related for e-commerce companies, and helping with a search kind of experience, and they were doing that on an hourly basis. The result of that was often that his clients just saw him almost like an employee or a contractor within their organization. That's kind of what they were doing. They were able to bill a good amount of hours and generate some nice revenue from that. But he always felt like he was kind of being held down and just treated as a contractor or an employee. And so the real opportunity for him became not with that existing client, but with new clients, starting off the conversation by really getting focused on what does the plan look like? What do you, to the company, to the buyer, what do you actually want to achieve here? And from the beginning, then looking at how do we create an overall strategy and a plan to help you not just implement this technology stuff, which is what we've been doing with all of our other clients, but actually, from start to finish, let's create a very clear strategy and plan together. And then I can advise you on what kind of systems you need. I can show you how you can, reduce your costs on equipment or on hosting. And so they become a trusted partner, an advisor, and not just a doer, not just an implementer. And so again, for existing clients, it's really about listening and asking questions and trying to find those new opportunities where you can propose and say, hey, here's the latest report. Here's what we've gone over, right? You're at a meeting, you're talking about what you're currently doing with a client. Everything's going well here. What's happening? How are you guys currently handling your hosting costs? Or what does your hosting costs currently look like? What are your plans with your new product rollout? You have to ask really, good questions to truly understand what's important for them, what their upcoming initiatives are. And that then will provide you with opportunities to suggest some new things. Say, well, have you thought about this? And what about that? Now, still transitioning that into a different pricing model is challenging. And that's why every consultant should be looking at the profitability of each client that they have. And every month or on a regular basis, you should be asking yourself, is this a client that I should keep? Or do I need to make some changes here? And there's nothing wrong with quote unquote firing a client or transitioning them off to someone else or, moving away, because every client that you have, right, fills up a part of your calendar and of your schedule. And so if those clients aren't profitable, if you're being held down by clients that right now are paying you lower fees, and you know that you should be earning more, that you deserve to be earning more, the value is there, but you're just not capturing it, you have to have that conversation with the client about, we need to make a change here. Here's why. Here's the additional value that I want to add. Or you let them go and you then open up your calendar to work with new clients where you can, right from the start, establish clear value and clear outcomes and what kind of ROI you can really provide to them, and then set them up with, in a much more strategic way with a pricing model that's going to be a great return for them, but also great compensation for you.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing you say is consistent with some things I've said to my clients, is that go into your existing clients, ask a lot of questions, get to know their business. Where are the bottlenecks? Where are you losing time? Where are your customers upset? Really go through that. You may not work with your contact who's the CEO or who's the division head or whatever. You may dive deeper. And if I'm hearing you correctly, let me see if we're in sync on this, and you go ahead and extrapolate on it, give an example. But it sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, if you have existing clients, whatever they're paying you, particularly if you have a vertical market, like you're going after legal or healthcare or professional service people, whatever, particularly, then you could actually go out and do kind of a pilot. You could do a test with your existing people, really nail down this additional added value you're going to give. And then when you get the next sales lead that comes in, you go close them on a different program. Am I hearing you correctly?
When you say a different program, what do you mean by a different program?
I mean, instead of your hourly or your per user or whatever it is, you're going to give them something that increases your profitability much significantly, because you're going to be adding a much more value from a strategic standpoint versus a tactical day-to-day, keep the systems running or whatever your particular business is.
Yeah, I mean, new clients is definitely much more simple, right? Whether you're increasing your fees or you're rolling out a new structure of how you're going to work with your clients, the new client situation is very simple, right? It's a new client; they don't know what you were offering before, and so if you have a new way that you want to run your business or a new pricing model, that's just, it is what it is. With existing clients, there's, I think, a big opportunity there. Your existing clients are your best source of new business if you treat them in a way that would create that kind of result, meaning that you do great work for them. So they're going to end up then referring you new business, but also that it costs a lot less to generate new business with existing clients than it does to generate new business from new clients. I think very often people are always focused on marketing and lead generation and the idea that I have to go out and find new business. Well, if you already have existing clients, don't neglect that as a big opportunity to generate new value, both for them and for you. I think a little bit more back to your question though, David. Yes, I would be going to every existing client and say, hey, here's what we're looking at rolling out. We have this new program, this new product, this new whatever. I wanted to get your feedback. Is this something that might be beneficial for you? And then of course, maybe there's some incentive that you provide to them since they're an existing client. Some people will say yes, some people will say no. And then as you start bringing in more new clients in this new model, you have some of your existing clients also moving to this model in some form. Then you get to go to all of your other clients and say, hey, here's where we're going. We'd love to have you come on this journey with us. We'd love to support you in this way. And then you make a decision as to how long you're going to keep them on, or whether you need to make some changes there. Because again, you don't want bad clients, or not necessarily that they're bad people, but as clients that are bad for your business that are going to hold you down because you're stuck in some old model with them, and that's not where you actually want to take the business.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. And am I also hearing you that, once again, going back to your suggestion, if you're in a larger organization, that gives you that much more opportunity for internal referrals as well as being
Huge.
referred outside?
Huge. I mean, this is one of the biggest areas where I see massive opportunity for people. When you're working with an organization that has multiple departments, or they're in different countries, don't focus your time. Like, I would just respectfully suggest, don't focus your time right now to try and find tons of new clients in all these different places. Right now, like your lowest hanging fruit is probably right under your feet. It's the organizations you're already working with. And so ask them questions. Hey, who else, as long as you're doing great work, which you should be, right? Who else should I know? Or, what other departments, or who are your friends in this organization? Find out how you can add value for other departments or other people in that organization. That could be a great source of business. Doesn't mean to neglect, like you should not neglect your pipeline, because if there's a change with, let's just say, that one company, and you have all of your business in that one company, now you're in a bit of a situation. And we see this a lot with consultants who essentially are contractors, David, right? They call themselves consultants because they're doing consulting work, but they don't actually have a business. They're contractors. They rely too much on just one or two clients. And so they're setting themselves for a big challenge at some point, because when that business stops from that client unexpectedly, or the project winds down, it's much better to be in a place where you don't have to then worry about where the next piece of business is going to come from, right? Your pipeline should be thriving. And so it is important that you're always marketing and building that pipeline. But if you're working with a large organization, I would look first as a lowest hanging fruit into how to expand within that organization.
Yeah, yeah, I experienced that when I was working with the Microsoft Dynamics group, and then I was getting referred to the other general Microsoft partner group. So I understand that. But I have another question for you. So if I'm understanding you correctly, I mean, you're talking about consulting. Are you talking about when you're this value you're going to provide? Is this a consulting project? You're going to go in 3 months, 6 months, you're done? Or is this a consulting thing that's going to be more of a long-term engagement?
Both.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, we have some clients in our work as well, where it's very focused on a defined period of time. But my preference is always long term. I think as long as there's value to be delivered and added, then it's great if you can create long term clients. I think consultants get a bad name sometimes when they essentially just try and stay with a client for as long as possible without really adding much value. But I think that's the minority, right? The majority of the situation is that there's great opportunity. There's always, if you're always looking for new value, as long as there really is value and you can make an impact, then set yourself up for long-term wins. And so as much as possible, finding ways to structure your model so that you are really engaging with your clients for the long term. I mean, that's I think, just to me, a no-brainer if you're able to do that. And for most people, it is, right? What we see in most cases with clients is you have your initial, we call it the discovery offer, which is a shorter, kind of defined engagement. And then that leads to your back end, or to the full engagement, which could be several months, but it could also be, in some cases, several years. We have clients that we've been working with now for 4 or 5 years, continue to help support their business as they're growing. But it all starts off with kind of an initial engagement.
So I'm curious on the reporting side. So what type of reporting do you do with a client, and how does that communicate the value you're delivering, whether it's whatever the cycle is, week by week, month by month, quarter by quarter, whatever?
So one of the tools that we've used for a long time, and I've written some posts about this. It's a 3-part kind of what we call, meeting review, and this is especially valuable, I've found, when you're working with retainer or long-term clients. And so the 3 parts are in every meeting that you have, whether you're having a weekly meeting or a monthly meeting, you review with your client these 3 things. So first of all is the past, meaning what have we done to this point? What have we accomplished? And that's really important because it tells to your client, they feel really that their investment has been justified. They feel good about what they've been doing with you to that point. It's like, okay, great, we've made this progress. This is now completed. Good job. Then the second thing that you look at is the present. So what are we currently working on? What's actively going on right now? And that's good for the client to know and good for you to know. But it also then says to the client, yeah, my investment into this consultant or into this company, again, is justified because look what they're actively doing for me right now. They feel a real sense of progress, of momentum, of action. And the third part is the future, right? So what comes next? And this is really key because you're planting the seeds for your client to get excited about the next piece of work or the next area they're going to help them with, which creates a lot of value in their mind. They see you as a long-term partner, but they're also preparing themselves to make that next investment. And so then it's no surprise to them when a month goes by or whatever that time period is, and they're writing that next check or making that next payment. They were already expecting it. And so what we've found is that if you want to keep long-term clients, at every meeting, go over those 3 things: the past, the present, and the future, and that sets up, just everyone to be in alignment.
Well, that also reminds me of something you said earlier, to not do the tasks that are low-level tasks that chew up your time, because when you're doing those things, you're not going to prepare well for that meeting, and you're not going to bring a report that actually has been well thought out.
Yeah.
Not only to confirm the value that we've been providing, and then to be thoroughly informed on what's happening right now, and then to put that inspiring vision of where we're still trying to go. We're not done yet. We've done this.
Exactly.
And
yeah, I think too often consultants will generate these very elaborate and detailed reports, and to the consultant, it's like, this is what we need, right? The more information and graphs and details and presentation, like PowerPoint, the more that I have in here, the more value it is for the client. And I want to really wow the client with everything that I've done. Like, you're going to put them to sleep.
That's
right? And so what clients really, what they want is to feel confident and clear, and to see that there's progress going on. And so that's where, literally this would be a 1-page, 3 sections: past, present, future, and each section has bullet points. That's it. You go over that with your client, they're up to speed, they know exactly what they need to be doing, and what the next steps are. Everyone's feeling good, they're on the same page, you're off to the races. You don't have to spend hours upon hours reviewing material, putting people to sleep. It's essentially like an executive summary.
Yeah, and basically we do a similar thing where we do past, present, future. We like to say that everybody's trying to get from point A to point B. And so you need to follow a map. So the past is the metrics. What metrics, what were promises, you hold accountability there. Then you move into the adjustments, which is the present phase. And then what's the plan for the future? So follow your map. So we have people doing map meetings. So I'm totally on board on that. And I love what you say about not wasting your time being in there. And one last thing before we sign off, and this may be a whole podcast in and of itself.
Sure.
But I'm curious, you talked about really working with existing clients to get new clients and getting new business. Beyond that, what do you find works best for people that want to get more consulting business, as far as finding those leads, finding those people that have needs that align with the services they're offering?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And, we look at this as based on kind of like what we call the marketing maturity model. So for an early stage consultant, their focus should be different than someone who's already, has a fairly well developed pipeline. We can go over both of these quickly. So, someone who's at the early stage, they should be focusing 80% of their time on direct outreach. So that might be LinkedIn, email, phone, or getting in front of your ideal clients. That's find the shortest path to build relationships. And when I say LinkedIn, I just want to make a distinction here, because I think all of us these days are inundated with essentially spam, right? People saying, hey, I can do this for you. Here's what I have, buy my stuff. And it's like, no, I don't even know who you are. Everything that I'm referring to here should be focused on building relationships and adding real value. Because when you're dealing with a savvy consulting buyer, someone who's going to invest a sizable amount into, of dollars or whatever currency you're in, you need to be focused on building that relationship and really adding value. But LinkedIn is a great place because literally you can send a message today to someone and tomorrow you could be on the phone with them. But don't just stay in LinkedIn. Add email to that. Think about adding the phone to that. If there's a local meetup or some groups that you can go to, those are all great places. Think about referrals. Do searches on LinkedIn to see who you can get introduced to. That's where you want to start because it's the fastest way to actually get in front of ideal clients and start building relationships with them.
But what works on LinkedIn? You and I both get these messages. Hey, I want to connect. It's like, okay, I want to connect. Or, and even if I get that and then I agree and then there's a follow-up message, what really works? It's really rare that I engage.
Yeah. So what really works and what we see with many of our clients is this all starts by getting very clear again on who your ideal client is. Because the message that you send on LinkedIn or email or any platform for that matter needs to be very specific and tailored. I'll give you an example, David. Let's say that right now let's just say you have you have a bad back pain. And you're sitting there going, oh man, my back is just killing me. If I sent you a message and said, hey, David, you want to go get a hamburger? You'd be like, what's this? I don't need this. But if I said, hey, David, hope you're having a great day. I've just put out a new book or a quick little guide or video that goes over 3 steps that you can take to instantly relieve your back pain. Even if you don't know who I am, you're going to probably click or just you're going to check it out, right? Because it's relevant to you. See, the problem with most people when it comes to marketing is they have adopted this mindset of, automation and volume. And so if I can avoid essentially spending time and just blast out a bunch of stuff, hopefully I'm going to land someone. But that doesn't work, at least not in our experience. What works is getting very clear about who your ideal client is and then developing a message that will get their attention and their interest. And in order to develop that message, you have to first of all speak to who is your ideal client, what is their problem, and what result do they want to achieve by solving that problem, and then why you, what makes you actually different. And so this is where the more specific that you can be about, percentages or dollar signs or success stories and case studies, things of that nature, you put that into a message and you then let your ideal client know, the people you're connecting with, a little bit about that. But you don't just lead with salesy information. You actually think about how can you be helpful to them. And so maybe you've developed a video or a podcast episode, or you've put out a study, you've done some research, there's a white paper or even an article. There's something that you believe would be valuable to them if they are an ideal client, and you offer it to them. You don't say, hey, here's this thing, but you can only have it if you do this, that, or the other. You offer to them. Then you follow up again, right? And so it's building these little kind of connection points and points of values. It's about really making deposits into the relationship bank account before you try and make a withdrawal. And the mistake that most people make is they try and make a withdrawal before they even built any kind of relationship. And so that's what's working on LinkedIn, is really thinking about how can you, first of all, get very clear about who the ideal client is, have a message that resonates with them, deliver valuable content to them, and then continue to add more to that. But you got to make sure that they know who you are. Because if they don't know who you are, if they don't, if you're not even on their radar, there's no chance that they're going to do business with you. But if you get on their radar and you're speaking to a problem that they have with clear, concise, and compelling messaging, then even if they're not ready to buy from you today, at least now they know who you are. And as long as you're staying in touch and you're frequently looking for ways to add value, again, they may not buy from you today, but when they do have that need, then whether that's weeks or months or even years down the road, they'll be thinking about you because you're the one that's staying top of mind.
Yeah, good point. And I can validate that. So there's a woman who's a fractional CFO, and she took that approach, sent me some stuff. I don't have a need for a fractional CFO. Did some follow-up with, hey, this article may be of interest to you, blah, blah, blah. And she just gained some credibility with me.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, she didn't inundate me. I didn't see something like every day or even every week. But now I've got a client who needs a fractional CFO.
Right. And who are you thinking of?
So I'm thinking of her. I'm thinking, oh, she might be a fit. At least she's worth a call.
Right.
So I will recommend her, and I'll recommend, our CPA if he's interested, and take it from there. So
And so imagine like
I can see that.
yeah, so you're 1 point, right? But imagine if she's doing that to 5 people or 10 people, each day and several times a week. Again, the majority of the people that she reaches out to won't be ready to engage with her right away. Some will, a small minority will, and she'll have a win right there. But over time, now you give her a referral, a few other people give her referrals, or a few people now recognize that, okay, actually I do need some help. And so now she's building up a thriving pipeline. So, we talked about the early stage people. You want to start by doing this kind of direct outreach. And then the other 20% of your time you should be spending on longer term authority building tactics. And that might be things like speaking or creating a podcast or writing articles, putting content out there. Essentially, you're developing your IP. The reason why you shouldn't put too much focus on that right away, if you're kind of earlier in that marketing maturity scale and kind of line, is because those things take time to work, right? They all can work and will work if you stick with them. But if you start saying, okay, I want to start speaking, well, by the time that you reach out to different venues and get confirmed or get acceptance, and then actually, the event actually happens, it might be many months down the road. Well, if you can get in touch with someone today by reaching out directly, why wouldn't you? So early stage, kind of 80-20. As your pipeline builds and you actually have people reaching out to you, you don't feel like you have to kind of struggle as much to generate that next client. Like things are going fairly well, but you want to grow your overall level of inquiries and grow your business. Now you should be spending more time on the longer term things, because the value of those, right, continues for a longer term. You can post one article that's great on your website. We have many of these, and years later, they're still generating a lot of inquiries for us. So that's where, as the business matures or as the pipeline matures, then you can actually spend more time on the IP, on the authority building, on the speaking, on the podcast, on the videos and other such things, because you're not as hungry today for a quick kind of number of inquiries to come in. They could come in weeks or months down the road and you'd be totally fine. So if that's your business situation, then you should be spending a lot more time on the longer term authority building side, because you'll get greater benefit from that. You should still be doing some direct outreach, but you'll be in a position where you can be much more kind of specific and more fine-tuned pinpointing with your direct outreach, because you don't need as many leads at that stage. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it makes perfect sense. I feel like we're just starting, but I know you've got other commitments, so we got to sign off. But Michael, I don't want to let people off. And two things. First of all, how do they get a hold of you? And more than likely, based on what you said, you have some guide or something you can give them that's really going to help them out. And I want to make sure they're aware of that.
Yeah, sure. So I encourage people, I'm very happy to connect with anyone on LinkedIn. You can find me there, Michael Zipursky. But also, yeah, if you head over to consultingsuccess.com/blueprint, we do have a consulting blueprint that will help you to launch and grow your consulting business. A lot of best practices in there. And again, you can get that at consultingsuccess.com/blueprint.
Yeah, so our audience out there, I want to remind you, Michael is a 7-figure consultant. So this is a guy who really knows how to be successful. He's got great tips for you. If that's the direction you want to go, definitely somebody to consider talking to or reach out to immediately. So thank you, Michael, very much for being with us. I really appreciate it.
Hey, David, really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.